and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. We're still here. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And what a week. As more healthcare providers, including in New York, are dropping gender-affirming care for teens, more than 4,000 of us rallied for trans youth.
3 men who preyed upon gay men in gay bars and killed 2 have been convicted of murder in Manhattan.
Trump has banned trans girls from girls' high school sports. Some schools are refusing to comply, though.
But not the NCAA. They have buckled to Trump and banned trans athletes, all 10 of them.
So the Republican, if you watch the Sunday morning shows, the Republican talking point...
Never. I gave that up years ago.
I tune into the beginning. The Republican talking point on killing USAID, our foreign aid, is that it funded LGBTQ projects. But Trump exempted fundamentalist groups from the cuts.
You will see that as a theme through this week's show. Trump has taken over the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, citing drag shows there. How long will it take him to rename it the Trump Center?
Well, or just perhaps rename the Capitol in his honor. The service...
I think he's serious about Mount Rushmore.
Oh, sure. And they might pass it.
Yeah.
You know, and then we'll just have to blow it up. The service academies have disbanded all racial, ethnic, women's, and LGBTQ clubs, but not the religious ones.
See, there it is again. Anti-trans fanatic Nancy Mace from South Carolina is not stopped from using repeated anti-trans slurs in a congressional hearing.
And I don't know what to make about her speech this week. The U.S. House's Equality Caucus, which is for LGBTQ rights, is now the largest caucus in Congress, 191 members, all Democrats.
Remember the Florida story about the guy who was killed in the dog park, the gay guy, by the guy who'd been calling him homophobic slurs and threatening him for months? Well, the killer just got acquitted.
Florida. We're going to remember pioneering HIV public health advocate and researcher Ernie Drucker.
The U.S. State Department has cut off pre-exposure prophylaxis to LGBTQ people, sex workers, and many more at risk around the world.
So a lot of bad news, but we're going to try to start off with some good stuff because there is good stuff happening on. You know, protests were held across the country against hospitals denying gender-affirming care, including Children's Hospital in Washington, D.C., UVA Health in Charlottesville, University of Illinois Health, Children's Hospital in L.A., and we went to this. There was they announced these rallies, and you're never sure who's going to show up.
Sometimes 20 people, sometimes 2 million.
So this was held in Union Square at 1 o'clock on Saturday. Look at the crowd. There were anywhere from 4,000 to 7,000 people there, cramming into that space in Union Square.
And it was cold.
It was pretty cold.
Yeah.
But people stayed. You know, and it was just terrific. And we want to bring you some of the testimony that was made it was a very tight event. Here, for instance, is Myra Kurzer, a transformative schools parent at the Saturday rally.
I almost didn't come today. I was afraid to bring my 6-year-old trans daughter. I was afraid to show her what she's up against. But a very kind friend reminded me that fear is not the answer. To paraphrase the famous quote, when we show our children the truth about the world, we're not teaching them that monsters exist. Trans kids know that monsters exist. They need to be taught that monsters can be defeated. Our children go into the world every day and choose to be themselves in the face of what they know they are up against. They are warriors.
That's right!
They don't need us to take the swords from their hands and tell them everything is fine. Everything is not fine. What they need is to hear the sound of an army at their backs. Our kids are on the front lines of the great battles of our time, the battles for reproductive rights and bodily autonomy, the battles for health care and for freedom of speech. They are what stands between us and the monsters. So what our kids need, they are fighting for you. Will you fight for them?
That's the question we all have to answer. I mean, you know, look, I mean, there's even controversy within the community about some of these trans youth issues, but they are the targets, the top targets, the scapegoats of this administration. And that's where you have to stop and draw the line.
Couldn't agree more.
And you know, there were some amazing children who were trans who spoke at this rally, including Huxley, a trans fourth grader, and we want to bring you their testimony.
Who is a fourth grader with Transformative Schools.
Hi, my name is Huxley. My pronouns are he, him, and I am 10 years old. Something that brings me joy is dressing in stylish outfits. It makes me feel fancy and confident. I also like playing piano, ice hockey, and seeing Broadway shows. I'm speaking at this rally because kids usually don't get the chance to attend public events in this way. I want my voice heard. People don't respect trans kids. They expect kids to just be normal. But being queer or trans doesn't mean we're not normal. Everyone is normal no matter who they are. It's important to protect trans kids because people treat them unfairly. If they were treated equally, they would not need to be protected. At school, I experienced a lot of bullying because of how I dress. People shouldn't care how I dress. It can feel annoying, scary, and unfair. There are also some great things about being queer. For example, if I weren't queer, I wouldn't have gone to transformative schools, and that would really be a shame. It's fun to go there, and I don't constantly feel like someone's about to comment on my identity, because transformative schools is an inclusive environment. A way you can help protect trans youth and prevent bullying is by teaching your children that there is nothing wrong with being trans or queer. Read books about trans kids and different identities. Make sure your kids notice and understand LGBTQ plus individuals in your community. Support groups like PFLAG and Transformative Schools. Thank you for attending this today. I hope you will help protect trans youth.
These kids are so brave.
Transformative Schools is an after-school program in New York that runs 4 days a week for 3 hours a day. Yeah. And clearly is really helping these kids gain some self-esteem.
And there were a lot of parents with their kids. We have a picture here of, you know, there's a mom with her kid. And we want to bring you one other mother. This is a 4-minute speech. Raina Bean, B-I-E-N, with her trans 5th grade child who also spoke at the rally.
Hi everyone, my name is Raina. I'm on the board of Transformative Schools and I'm the proud parent of this spicy and adorable trans non-binary child, Huxley. Hello. I can't put into words how good it feels to see this huge crowd of people turn out for our kids. Being the parent of a trans kid often feels isolating, like existing in a parallel universe. Despite living in this big blue bubble during a time that everyone likes to say is so safe and affirming, in the background an alarm bell has been sounding that it felt like only trans people and their closest loved ones could hear. It got louder when we heard about the first anti-trans bills passed in red states. It got louder when we saw anti-trans editorials in mainstream newspapers like the New York Times. It got louder when people refused to disavow public figures who made hateful, openly transphobic comments, like a certain children's author who writes books about wizards. By the way, please don't choose those books about wizards over trans kids. And of course now, the alarm bells have gotten so loud that everyone can hear them. We're living in a state of emergency. I want to speak directly to the cis parents of cis kids who are here today. I know you can relate to having fears about your children's future. I'm scared that NYU will cancel my kid's next appointment because so far, they'll only tell me that their care is safe for now. I'm worried that by the time my kid goes on their spring field trip to see the monuments of Washington, D.C., that it will be illegal for them to use the bathroom. What if next fall, when we start 6th grade at an all-new school, a teacher refuses to use Huxley's pronouns for the first time in their life? But what I'm really scared about is life in 20 or 30 years. We now know that progress doesn't just happen automatically with the passage of time. The cis kids that will grow up in this age of trans erasure are not all being raised by parents like you. There will be people who will raise their kids to be indifferent. And there will be people who will raise their kids to be hateful. This is why we need your help. Whenever our kids feel unsafe, we tell them to look for the allies. We need a commitment from you that you'll raise your kids to be those allies. We need your kids to be loud, to protect, to love, and to stay in the fight for as long as it takes. Because with the amount of transphobia that's in the air right now, an entire generation of kids is going to be affected. Our kids can't do this on their own. As parents, we can't protect our kids on our own. We need your support. Please talk to your kids about their trans peers and let them know what's happening. I know they'll choose to do the right thing.
It feels amazing to see all of you today here. For us, the trans kids.
That's great. And, you know, if you're looking for a demo to go to, apparently there's going to be a nationwide day of protest to resist fascism. At noon on Monday, President's Day, there will be actions at the White House, state capitals, city halls across the country, and in New York. It's called No More Dictators, 1 p.m. in Union Square.
I hope the weather's a little better. Yeah, I mean, the whole point is we need a grassroots movement. We need anger and demands from the ground up because the Democratic politicians, the leaders of corporations, everyone is being very ineffectual. And the only thing that stops something like this, I go back time and again to what stopped the Vietnam War. It was millions of people in the streets demanding an end. Now, we don't have a president who's as foresighted as Richard Nixon now. And God knows they don't care about us or anybody else, but I have to believe that there is some critical mass we could assemble that would change things.
Right. And Tish James, who was our attorney general, who was under attack, I mean, her security clearance was taken away by Trump. Now, I thought, oh, well, you know, and the only thing you need that for is like for going into certain files and things like that when you're handling a case. But it also means she is not allowed to enter a federal building anywhere in the country. This is what these, and he's done this to a whole bunch of people. You may not enter federal buildings.
He took away not only Joe Biden's security detail, but his access to briefings that all former presidents get.
And to his gay security advisor. Anyway, but we got a message of support from Tish James on TikTok or something or whatever it was. Here it is.
Hey, it's Tish. I wanted to take a minute to talk to some of my friends and to let you know that it's going to be okay. I've held many of you in the past few months as you've cried and shared your fears. Because right now, transgender individuals are being used as a political weapon. It's the worst of politics. It's disgusting and it's dangerous. And what they're trying to do is divide us. It's appeal to our worst impulses. But most importantly, a lot of what is happening is illegal, which is why I'm fighting for you. I want you to live your lives without any political gamesmanship, and I will defend your right to be exactly who you are. I'll stand with you, I'll be with you, and I'll fight for your right to be free.
Thank goodness for blue state attorneys general.
Yeah.
And you know, we have to pressure the Democrats, and Rise and Resist had a demonstration. We have a picture of it. Urging Chuck Schumer to do a lot more. He's the minority leader of the Senate. Now they're saying they're not going to give any votes to the Republicans as they try to get the budgets passed and all those kinds of things. But then at the end, they tend to pull back on those things because it means shutting down the government.
Well, whether they do or not, the Republicans are not going to rely on them.
Well,
I know
in the House, they need Democratic votes because they've got Republican hardliners who will not vote for these budgets.
We'll see whether those hardliners hold out.
And, I told you a couple of weeks ago, the Democrats in New York are going to delay the special election to replace Elise Stefanik. They're pulling back on that now. I mean, if you don't learn how to play hardball, like the Republicans, we're doomed.
Yeah. Do you think the Republicans would step back from that strategy? No.
Absolutely
in a
not.
second, they would be doing that.
Absolutely not.
Ugh.
All right.
But one thing Tish said is so important and so true. Most of what the Republicans are doing is illegal.
Yes.
All their firings, all their cancellations, all their this and that, it's all illegal.
Yeah, who's going to enforce the court orders?
Well,
that is the massive question now.
Yep.
You have an Attorney General, Pam Bondi, it's totally in Trump's pocket. You have a military. Are they going to rebel? I'm kind of waiting for a coup by General Milley to restore democratic
Don't hold your
government.
breath. Well, as long as we're on the topic, let's go back to Rise and Resist and another of their protests this week. And this is getting popular everywhere. Protests at Tesla sales offices where the cars are sold. I have a friend who has...
This is in the meatpacking district in the Village.
I have a friend who lives in Oakland, California, who has a Tesla, and I'm wondering whether she's daring to take it out on the road.
Sales
these days.
are way down.
Thank God.
So there they are.
So, and there they were outside the showroom, and then this is a sticker that is now on the Tesla sign. Don't buy swastikas.
Swastikars.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then they went inside the showroom and put their signs on the hideous Teslas.
Elon Musk is not my president. Yeah. Well, he is now.
Yeah, but but Rise and Resist.
This was before his performance in the Oval Office.
Rise and Resist has been doing demos for years now against Trump, going to his trials. You can join them and join an existing group that already has strategy and signs and plans to do things.
And in more good news of rebellion, Defense Secretary Hegseth goes to visit military families in Germany at a base, and they boo him.
Oh, I love that.
Families, These are dozens of families booing him, chanting DEI, DEI. Because he ordered the restriction of learning materials covering subjects that included psychology and immigration in Defense Department schools. He also, of course, this week, military is not going to allow transgender individuals to join and will stop performing or facilitating procedures with gender transitions, so they're denying medical care.
People are going to have to transition back. They're going to lose their identity.
And
he's trying to drive them out.
And he unilaterally changed the name of Fort Liberty in North Carolina back to Fort Bragg in honor of a Confederate general. In other words, in honor of a traitor to the United States of America.
But don't you know how he did that? He picked another guy named Bragg, who was a decorated service member, and said, we're honoring him so that he could call it Fort Bragg without being accused. In fact, there's a law against naming these facilities against Confederate generals, so that's how he got around it. Found another guy named Bragg.
That's like when the Broadway producer David Merrick couldn't get good reviews for a show. He found people had the same name as the critics and posted them all in the ads.
Yes, he did.
All right. But Delta Airlines is holding the line. They've announced they will not be backing down from DEI programs, although Goldman Sachs and all the financial firms are eager to get back to discriminating, especially against black people, for Black History Month.
Well, they're certainly eager to ingratiate themselves with the overlords. Whether they're eager really to give up DEI, I couldn't say, but they are eager to bend the knee.
And we're getting some justice. A Manhattan jury on Monday convicted the three men charged with murdering and drugging and robbing patrons of gay clubs and bars, luring them to their deaths. We have pictures of the two men who were killed in separate incidents. One of them, Julio Ramirez, was left dead in the back of a taxi. The other, John Umberger, died in a townhouse when his attackers partied next to his lifeless body. So there were three who were convicted. As the guilty verdicts were announced, family members of the men gasped.
Yes, well, what can we say about that? Other good news. Minnesota has announced that it will follow its state's gender non-discrimination law for trans athletes, and also says it can't hold immigrants without a criminal warrant. So they are defying the federal government in both those cases.
But of course, this was the week where Trump, surrounded by little girls, his favorite way to live, signed an executive order that seeks to ban transgender athletes from participating in women's sports. And this was in the East Room with dozens of women and girls. It's so disgusting.
And the NCAA announced that it will go along with this because they want to follow clear and consistent messages to trans girls. And this is all coming up in part because the 2028 Olympics are scheduled for Los Angeles, and Trump is trying to keep all trans athletes out of the Olympics from around the world.
Maybe they should move the Olympics then.
Maybe they should.
The way they do this, by the way, and they're doing it to everybody that they can, if you get any semblance of federal funding, we will withhold that. We will take that back if you don't comply with our orders.
And that basically applies to all schools and hospitals in this country.
But federal funding usually makes up less than 10% of school revenue. So schools are going to have to make some decisions if they want to stand for justice.
Make some decisions. In Texas, they're going to mandate Bible instruction and time for Bible study and posting the 10 Commandments in the classroom.
And the U.S. Department of Education, while it lasts, is investigating San Jose State University's volleyball team. We've told you about that. And the University of Pennsylvania swimming program because
Leah Thomas,
et cetera.
But some Democratic members of Congress made a big show of going to the Department of Education to try to stage their own little. I
think led by Mark Takano.
Yes, and they were barred at the door.
Yes,
they weren't
they were.
allowed inside the building. Now, this is a public building.
And, state, again, attorneys general are suing over this order of this cut to federal funding.
Well, there are a lot of lawsuits being brought, including trans people who are challenging the State Department's refusal to allow gender markers on passports. The ACLU is leading that lawsuit.
And of course, the big Supreme Court case that's already been heard about Tennessee's law, banning gender-affirming care for adolescents, that was heard, and we'll hear about that in June. But obviously, the Trump Department of Justice has switched sides on that now. Of course, the Biden administration was arguing our side.
But they also said they want the case to continue, even though now they're on the state side and the state is on the state side. And the only people on the other side are the trans people suing. But the Trump administration lawyers said, we want it to continue because we want to establish a precedent that that states can outlaw this kind of care.
So, Neil Gorsuch, of course, wrote the Bostock decision, which protected transgender people in employment. I'm wondering if they can get another, but people are wondering if they can get another vote. I sort of wonder, can these people look at what is happening and see the vileness of, well, I guess not since they banned abortion, but the vileness of what is going on? Well,
I would guess, and we're only guessing at this point, some yes, some no. To some Supreme Court justices, this is a dream come true. I'm sure Sam Alito and Clarence Thomas are just thrilled. And Kavanaugh and Gorsuch is, I think, the most to the right of the three new ones most of the time, not always. But Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett are the question marks, and Roberts can go either way, and then we have our three: Elena Kagan, Sotomayor.
So you've heard a ton about how USAID, which is USAID, a foreign aid program all over the world, used to be championed by Marco Rubio when he was a senator. This is essential to the United States and the world. Now he's Secretary of State. He's in charge of it now, put himself in charge of it, and he's getting rid of it. But, so most of these programs are being cut. And, you've heard this is a big story. But Franklin Graham runs a charity called Samaritan's Purse, which gets $90 million from USAID. And he says he's gotten an exemption to keep his ministry going there. But Catholic Relief Services
did not get an exemption
because the Pope's not being nice to Mr. Vance.
Well, USAID, 10,000 employees have been fired from USAID, which leaves 290 to run the worldwide programs, which have basically been shut down.
It leaves $500 million worth of food on the docks, and it leaves farmers who in the United States who produce this stuff in the lurch,
and
holding the bag.
And leaves China a clear path to go in and make up for all this stuff.
But you know what Trump does for the farmers when they get screwed? He says, oh, okay, we'll just give you money.
Yeah, that is what he does. But it's very, you can read about this in various places, but it is not an accident that they started this whole campaign with USAID. Because foreign aid traditionally polls so low. The American people are so ignorant about this tiny bit of money that we give around the world to help people around the world because they need help and because it's good for us and our reputation around the world and for peace and whatever. Not that I trust the U.S. government on any of this, but certainly a net positive. And the Trump administration targeted this specifically to start its campaign of terror because they figured this was the way to get the American people the most on their side for, we're rooting out waste and corruption.
Sure.
So then they can go after everything else.
But they're not rooting out racists on Elon Musk's staff with these kids who, he's calling them the Musketeers, these teenagers who work for him. And, J.D. Vance went to bat for the guy who said he would, like to normalize Indian hate. And, of course, Vance is married to a South Asian woman. When are you going to leave him?
Oh, no. Let me just run down a quick list here because we could go for hours on this. Pam Bondi, the new Attorney General, who was so sweet and kind in her confirmation hearings and said, don't worry about me. Well, she has now started an instant reign of terror at the Department of Justice, threatening to fire any employee who makes the slightest move to complain about any Trump program. They're gone. The West Point affinity groups have been canceled.
All affinity groups for Latinos, blacks, women, everybody.
They want to kill the Department of Education completely.
But not the religious groups.
NIH has canceled billions of dollars in research funds. They have fired the U.S. archivist. HUD, the housing department, has canceled gender non-discrimination protections in housing.
For LGBTQ people.
The gender identity non-discrimination. The National Endowment for the Arts has canceled art grants to underserved populations and will focus on celebrating the United States' 250th anniversary next year. That's what Trump is mandating.
And they're doing this at the National Science Foundation. The list of terms that they're banning, that if they're anywhere in your research. But, I mean, it's not just gay or anything. It's words like trauma, barriers, equity, these kinds of things.
Yes.
I mean, which have all kinds of meanings, by the way. But if it shows up on a computer thing, you're gone. You don't get your money.
Your grant is over.
We're facing a bird flu epidemic that could, and I say without exaggeration, could wipe us out. And we are crippling the science groups, and they're cutting all kinds of science funding now, on the verge of this. I mean, the least you could do is control it among the bird population so that we don't pay so much for eggs. But they're not even doing that.
Well, what has become clear is that Musk wants to fire all the federal government employees and replace them with machines. So maybe he truly is trying to wipe out most of the U.S. population and just run a little machine operation for the country. National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has dropped all mention of trans kids because they would lose Department of Justice funding if they mention them.
And these are some of the main kids who are missing and exploited.
The State Department has canceled all funding, as we said, of PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis, except for pregnant women, because they want women to give birth.
Right.
And it's not
just being cut for gay people. It's being cut for your average heterosexual.
Yep.
And, of course, for sex workers. So, again, the message is die, die, die.
It may sound like hyperbole, but if you pay attention, you will find out it is not hyperbole. This is literally what they want to do.
This is the end.
And when he stands up in the Oval Office, literally standing up next to Trump and says...
Musk, you're talking about.
Yes, Musk. We are rooting out corruption and fraud and theft. No one says to him, give us an example.
Yes.
Because he can't, because they aren't.
Right. And because what he's really trying to do is stop people from prosecuting him for fraud with all these contracts that he's got with the government.
I've also decided that we made a mistake 4 years ago. We should have let Trump be elected, because then he would not have had a chance to prepare all this. He would have just done another 4 years of stumble-bumdom and been out. But now,
too late.
He's had 4 years.
4 years of being indicted and prosecuted, which is his anger.
But the Heritage Foundation, yes, that allows him to go along with all this. The Heritage Foundation has had 4 years to train thousands of workers. All these people they're putting into these departments to kill them. These are all the people trained by the Heritage Foundation and adhering to the plans of Project 2025. This is all very well planned.
It could be argued, but underlying it, and it's not just Trump, there is a fascist movement in this country. There is an appeal for it. And, although I don't know who his successor is, because he says it's not Vance.
They have a little time to come up with it. But, he doesn't think he's leaving.
Right.
So, and he may not be, given, I always thought that was a big joke. I no longer think it's a big joke. If he were 20 years younger, oh my God. But yeah.
Well, he's only, 78 or 9 or something like that? But
78.
his father lived well into his 90s. His father, the Klan member.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he's once again using gender nonconformity as his excuse to try and make him... Well, first he said, I'm going to make myself the head of the Kennedy Center because they did a drag show. It's disgusting. He, of course,
It's not like he saw the drag show. He's never been to the Kennedy Center. He has no idea what they do.
They had a drag brunch in the restaurant, so what? Anyway, again, this is what, he thinks will...
Well, here's what the Kennedy Center used to look like.
Yes.
Thank you.
that will never happen again during this administration,
Never.
lighting it up in rainbow colors.
Even though the new interim executive director is
Rick Grinnell, put his picture up. There he is.
Yeah.
He's a gay guy. He's a monster. There will be no more drag shows or other anti-American propaganda. I never knew that a drag show was anti-American propaganda.
Yes, where'd they come up with that?
And who was fired from the board? Among those fired, Corinne Jean-Pierre
Well.
and Jean-Baptiste, who you might have seen perform the national anthem at the Super Bowl.
But evidently Melania is angry because she was looking forward to being on the honorary board of the Kennedy Center along with all the other first ladies. And now the Kennedy Center has been so screwed that it's no longer a desirable place for her.
Oh. And again, you have to. Can I read this list?
Sure.
Yes. At the NSA, they have 27
National Security Agency.
banned words that was distributed to staff: anti-racism, racism, allyship, bias, DEI, diversity, diverse, confirmation bias, equity, equitableness, feminism, gender, gender identity, inclusion, inclusive, all-inclusive, inclusivity, injustice is a bad word, intersectionality, prejudice, privilege, racial identity, sexuality, stereotypes, pronouns is a banned word. I don't know how you get around that. Transgender and equality, all banned words. Why don't you just burn the Declaration of Independence?
And the Constitution.
Well, they have.
Yeah.
They have.
All right, shall we, wait, what else have we got here? We did that. All right.
Trump has stripped security clearances from 51 enemies, by the way, not just Tish James and Alvin Bragg. Colonial Williamsburg is engaging in what we call obedience in advance to Trump. I mean, I don't know how much federal money they got, but they have taken down from their website this comprehensive history of the American Revolution. So it will no longer, cover things like the relationship with indigenous peoples and slavery and all these other kinds of things.
All they want to do is create this phony event a year from now celebrating the glory of America, which they will entirely redefine, and Trump will be the founding father.
Well,
let's talk about Paula White.
Sure.
Christian nationalism is the new...
That's his spiritual advisor, and she's been rehired.
He's created a presidential commission on religious liberty and ordered the Department of Justice to eradicate anti-Christian bias.
You're not allowed to use the word bias.
Well, I'm sure it'll go out of business immediately.
I'm reporting you.
And Reverend Paula White there in the pink will lead the White House Faith Office.
The Congressional Equality Caucus, which is for LGBTQ rights, has 191 U.S. representatives who joined, making it the largest caucus in the Congress. That's encouraging, but 191 is not enough votes to pass anything.
The Social Security Administration will no longer allow people to change their sex markers on their records. But good news from the State Department LGBTQ group, employee group. They said, fine, you don't want us to do this? We are resigning in protest and we will move off campus.
Yes.
We will reorganize independently.
Unlike the DOJ group, which just disbanded in cowardice.
Yeah.
Eric Adams, the DOJ, paused their prosecution of our corrupt mayor. So this means that...
I'm not corrupt. I've never done anything wrong.
So this means that he lives under the thumb of Trump. If he gets out of line, they can reactivate the prosecution. By the way, I told you that our city council, the Republicans elected a gay minority leader from Staten Island. They've gotten rid of him. The caucus, they revoted and they put in somebody else.
Yeah.
In Michigan, the first poll of Democrats on who should be their Senate nominee to succeed Gary Peters, who was retiring. 40% said Pete Buttigieg, out gay, and State Attorney General Dana Nessel was second. She's at 16% at this point.
Either one would be great. I'm a fan of Dana Nessel because she is so fierce. So fierce. Operated independently to bring lawsuits that ended up legalizing same-sex marriage in Michigan, and then got elected Attorney General. Who could imagine it?
In Boise, Idaho, several large book publishers and a tiny public library, they're suing Idaho over their law that forces libraries to keep some books in an adult-only section. I mean, this includes things like Slaughterhouse-5, Clockwork Orange. It's nuts.
In Piscataway, New Jersey, a lesbian police lieutenant, Constance Crea, has gotten a $750,000 settlement of her lawsuit for persistent sexual and sexual orientation harassment and abuse by the chief of police in Piscataway. Congratulations.
Should we show this at this point or not?
Sure, why not?
Well, so speaking of abuse, Nancy Mace, the monster from South Carolina and the House, went on a tirade this week in a hearing.
USAID awarded $2 million to strengthen trans-led organizations to deliver gender-affirming health care in Guatemala. So to each of you this morning, does this advance the interests of American citizens paying for trannies in Guatemala to the tune of $2 million? Yes or no? Governor?
Representative Gerald Connolly, the top Democrat on the panel, asked House Oversight Chair James Comer to weigh in on Mace's phrasing.
The gentlelady has used a phrase that is considered a slur in the LGBTQ community and the transgender community. And let me please finish without interruption. And
tranny. I don't really care. You want penises in women's bathrooms, and I'm not going to have it.
Okay.
No, thank you.
Let the gentleman state his parliamentary inquiry.
We're cutting her off. I mean, it went on because the chair said, "Well, I don't know what's a slur or not."
I'm cutting you off.
Okay.
Representative Mary Miller, a Republican from Illinois, sitting in the chair in the House, presiding over the Senate, called on the gentleman from Delaware, Sarah McBride, the trans woman who was elected, just because she thought she was so clever to do that.
Well, you know, Sarah McBride says, well, I'm not going to take the bait, but I mean, my goodness, other people should be standing up and objecting, and quite frankly, she should. And she said, you know, in terms of the restrooms, well, I never intended to use the restrooms, you know, the public restrooms.
I agree. I'd like her to be stronger, but I also take
and she keeps saying, I'm just trying to work with everybody. They don't want to work with you.
In 2023, this Mary Miller from Illinois said banning abortion was a victory for white life.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Horrible news from Tampa, Florida. The man accused of murder, we told you at the top of the show, of killing a gay man, Walter Lay, at the dog park, was, after 2.5 hours, the six-person jury, what is that? What the hell is that? That he did not commit second-degree murder.
Self-defense.
Yeah.
This is... You know, he had been abusing this guy for months, calling him homophobic slurs, threatening his life, said to him the day before, I'm going to kill you tomorrow. Yes. And they both show up at the dog park, and he killed him.
There were no witnesses, so he got away with it. And then in Mississippi, we told you about Jimmy J. Lee, a gay student who was murdered in Carroll County, Mississippi, and
2022.
Yes, 2022. He was a 20-year-old student, prominent member of the Ole Miss LGBTQ community, but they never found his body. And they tried the suspect, this guy Harrington, and it was a mistrial. And the lawyer said, well, there's no body, no crime. But they haven't set a new trial date yet. But now that they have they found his remains now, and off we go. Yeah. All right, international news? No? Yes?
Yeah, do that if I have something.
Okay. Well, you know, I showed you that picture from Union Square. It's quite a more impressive picture from Germany, where people are protesting the AfD party, which is the fascist party, which is gaining ground in Germany, which is extremely alarming.
At the behest of Elon Musk.
Oh yes,
who's been over there encouraging them.
There are like hundreds of thousands of people out on the street over there. There's more of a tradition of that in Europe than there is here. Yeah. But we have to step up and start doing that.
I'm sorry, I found a few notes. Google Calendar has dropped any mention of Black History Month, Pride Month. They've adopted the Gulf of America.
As has Apple, in short order. But not the AP.
Health and Human Services will slash jobs, including at the Food and Drug Administration, the Centers for Disease Control, the National Institutes for Health.
The message from Washington is, you're on your own.
And you can't trust scientists. That's the message. And the courts are halting data mining. This is a good thing. The courts are trying to stand up. I have no confidence that when stuff gets to the Supreme Court that they'll support this. But so far, intermediate courts have halted the Treasury Department data mining, blanket resignations being forced, birthright citizenship being canceled, and stopping federal funding already allocated.
But it seems like the Supreme Court's not going to overturn the decision about libeling public figures that you can still...
Thank God, in spite of Steve Wynn
we would be off the air.
No one knows we exist.
Hey, give them a lot of credit, and we love you, and we appreciate your tuning in and sharing this time with us.
Share the news. And the Department of Justice is suing sanctuary cities for blocking deportations.
Yeah.
Okay. And Russell Vought confirmed at Office of Management and Budget, he's the real monster.
Not completely.
Christian nationalist, says ignore laws.
Wrote Project 20, the leader of Project 2025 is now the budget.
Back to international news.
Well, the prominent LGBTQ rights organization, Egal Canada, is going to boycott events in the United States to protest the Trump administration's assault on trans people. And they say, look, it's not safe for our people to come into the country and go through customs and go through passport control. So we're not doing it.
God forbid you have an X marker.
We're not coming to a whole bunch of things, including the World Pride, which is in Washington, D.C. Now, we can turn, as I say, we can turn that into a massive anti-Trump demonstration if we're smart. But a lot of people from overseas are not going to be able to come.
Well, and that's why we should go, but I'm very skeptical that the organizers of World Pride will do what they should do, but...
What is it going to be, a Mardi Gras?
We'll see. They've done some...
We'll see about that.
They did great stuff holding the first World Pride in Rome during the Catholic churches.
Against the wishes of the Holy Father.
Yeah,
it was Jesus' 2000th birthday.
Now, I'm also encouraged by big demonstrations in Argentina against Milei. He gave a speech in Davos that equated homosexuality to pedophilia.
Yep.
And he wants to remove femicide from the penal code, murdering women. And the country is turning against him pretty quickly. That's great.
And the role model for all the right-wingers in America is Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary.
Yep.
But a new poll shows the opposition party there leading 42% to 37%. Now, he'll do his best to rig the election and stop that, but that's encouraging.
And Spain has progressive leaders, and they are doing very well, and that is also some encouraging news.
Well, they have a new law that mandates LGBTQ inclusion initiatives for all companies with more than 50 employees. They're not pulling back on DEI.
However, in Zambia, the U.S. Embassy there has revoked a grant to the Africa Human Rights Coalition to house 25 LGBT refugees. So these people are now left homeless because the U.S. Embassy has revoked the money it was going to contribute.
Indonesia, 56 men arrested at a private gathering that police said was a gay sex party. and are charging them with penalties they face penalties of up to 15 years in prison, even though homosexuality is not technically illegal in Indonesia. They get you on something else, but they're working on a new penal code over there to make it even worse.
In a little lighter news, in Switzerland, a couple of ice dance professionals, 2 women, have decided that they will skate together at an exhibition series called Art on Ice.
Gabriella Papadakis and Madison Hubble.
They dance regularly, ice dancing with male partners, but they were just playing around, and decided it would be fun to skate together, and that's what they're going to do.
Well, Skate Canada is the only governing body that allows same-sex couples to compete nationally, and that's been in place since 2022. But that will end when it becomes the 51st state.
Well, the Gay Games has had same-sex couples skate together for many years.
I hope so.
Exactly. But the thing about ice dancing competitions is that they are male-female couples, so you don't have a male division and a female division. You already have men and women together in this one competition. So if they want to pair off differently, there shouldn't be any problem with that.
Right. Who leads? Who follows? Anyway, in Manchester, England, a theater had to suspend their performance of a Dolly Parton musical, Here You Come Again, because somebody started screaming homophobic abuse because there's a gay character in it. Now, do they not know that she's a big pro-gay entertainer?
In Manchester, England, no, they don't. It's not a...
The news doesn't get over there?
It's not a particularly...
I would think if you're a fan of Dolly Parton, that you ought to know that.
No, you're too optimistic.
Anyway, President Trump ordered all foreign assistance to South Africa be halted and said that they're now going to prioritize the resettling of white Afrikaner refugees because they are racially disfavored landowners. I mean, I use the word grotesque about 100 times a week when I'm commenting on things.
Well, guess who thought up that?
All right.
Let's talk about Ernie Drucker.
Yeah, okay, sure.
In AIDS news. Ernie Drucker died at age 84 in New York City, dementia. He was technically a researcher for many years, but he was known for his compassionate support of people with HIV and people who were drug users, drug-addicted people.
Harm reduction is something he really, emphasized, which was a kind of a relatively new concept back then. Which means you don't punish people for drug addiction.
You try to help them and help them ultimately get clean, but whatever.
And when ACT UP did needle exchange, he went to court and defended them.
Yes, 4 people were on trial for doing needle exchange in Jersey City, New Jersey, and Ernie Drucker went out there and testified for them.
Really one of the good guys.
He was a clinical psychologist, a professor, early proponent of harm reduction, and used epidemiological evidence to help inmates, the homeless, people with TB, tuberculosis, asbestos, and HIV-positive drug
wonderful
users.
Guy.
Dedicated for
wonderful guy.
His entire life.
So, we already talked about what they're doing with PrEP, which is awful. In Los Angeles, the St. John's Community Health, which is one of the largest free and reduced cost providers in Los Angeles, reported the CDC on Friday terminated a $1.6 million grant that was supposed to support transgender health and social services programs. Now, I mean, they're acting like these are not people anymore who need services. They just cut them off.
That concept is gone. We no longer care about people. We no longer see our job as helping people. It's just all gone. You're all on your own. We're not going to help you.
And so watch out for your Medicare and Medicaid as well.
Well, can we now segue to, you have more?
No. There's NIH. Again, in line with the whole bird flu thing, the CDC is now censoring its own Morbidity and Mortality Weekly report, where they had a thing that was going to come out on bird flu, and they took it back. Because it's science, and also see Trump. It's like with the
the birds gay?
It's like no. This is like Trump with the COVID thing.
Yeah.
Would you just stop reporting all these statistics?
Yes,
It's killing me.
If we reported fewer deaths,
right,
it would not be so bad.
Right. I don't want any bad news about bird flu or anything else. I mean, this is nuts, folks.
It is, and all we're going to hear about for the next couple of years is the anniversary of America next year.
Well, we have some things to say about that, since this was a nation founded mostly by slave owners.
All right.
Not such a proud history.
Should we take a break and do a little entertainment news?
Yeah.
All right. Well, last week we missed a lesbian winner at the Grammys, and that was Ruthie Foster, who won for Best Contemporary Blues Album. Congratulations, Ruthie.
Yeah. And okay, we've told you a lot about Ann's favorite show, and I liked it too.
Mary.
Mary. The new Mary Todd Lincoln, the main role, is going to be played by out-gay Titus Burgess from March 18th for just 3 weeks.
Yeah, catch it. White Lotus comes back this weekend on Sunday. White Lotus 3, set in Thailand on HBO. And Last Week Tonight with John Oliver comes back Sunday night. I'm very eager to see how he's going to handle all this.
And I saw a cute little film from Britain called Bonus Track. Joe Anders and Samuel Paul Small there. They're gay teens at a school, but the claim to fame for this film is that Josh O'Connor wrote part of the story.
Prime Video, Clean Slate.
By the way, that's coming to Amazon this week.
Well, also coming to Amazon this week is Clean Slate, starring Laverne Cox as a trans woman who goes home to her hometown in Alabama to hang out with her father, played by George Wallace. This was a Norman Lear production. 8 episodes on Prime Video, Clean Slate.
And you and I just saw Honora.
I paid $5.99 on Amazon Prime to watch Honora, cheaper than any movie theater.
And
I liked it.
It won the Critics' Choice Award for Best Film and 2 Guild Awards about a young woman sex worker, Mikey Madison, hooks up with a 21-year-old dissolute son of a Russian oligarch, played by Mark Edelstein.
It's pretty wild.
She's, stripper. It's wild. I didn't think it was much of a comedy. I mean, it's pretty raw.
I like Sean Baker's movies that I've seen, Tangerine and The Florida Project. This is a little different, but it's in the same vein, and I think worth seeing.
And
by the way, the Critics' Choice Awards, Chelsea Handler, I thought, did a great job of hosting, and Natasha Lyonne was a riot.
And I also finally saw Sing Sing, starring Out Coleman Domingo as an inmate at the New York prison who leads a theater program for other inmates. And it is also very raw, but very real. And I have to say, at the end of it, I was in tears. I mean, it was very, very moving. So I recommend Sing Sing, and he's up for a bunch of awards, including, I believe, the Academy Award.
Well, we'll see what's happening at the Academy Awards. Amelia Perez won Best Supporting Actress for Zoe Saldana, Best Song, Best Foreign Language Film. To be continued next week. We'll see you then.